Okay, we have set the stage defining a qualified facility. Now, let's get into how to determine if one meets that criteria. First off, the FDA is not going to make this determination for you. A business owner is responsible for doing the calculations to determine if they meet the criteria. However, FDA will verify this information, so it's important to keep that paper trail of how you made the determination. The calculation for annual sales of human food needs to be done every year. It is defined in the regulation that this calculation be done no later than July 1st of each calendar year. This calculation includes all human food that is sold or currently being held in inventory. This includes all human food, regardless of whether that food is covered by other regulatory oversight. For example, you would include products such as seafood, juice, low-acid canned foods, and dietary supplements. Likewise, you would include raw agricultural commodities such as produce, grains, milk, and eggs, and products subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. For example, meat products for human consumption, regardless of whether these products are subject to the Preventive Controls for Human Food rule. So, how do you calculate this average annual sales? First, determine which 3 years to include in your calculation. Next, determine for each one of those years the market value of food processed, packed, or held. Adjust those annual sales and market value for inflation. Finally, calculate the inflation-adjusted average annual sales. The average is based on the 3-year period preceding the applicable calendar year. The applicable calendar year is the current year. So in 2021, you would use 2018, 2019, and 2020 to calculate the average annual sales. If you have not been in operation for 3 years, you would calculate that annual sales based on the preceding 2 or 1 year to the current calendar year. If you're just starting out, you can project the number when you begin. You need to have a lot of documentation to make this calculation, and this information needs to be available to FDA if they request it. The calculation does not get adjusted for the cost of sales. For example, you would not adjust the total sales for the cost of labor. You also don't remove the cost of food sold directly to the qualified end users. FDA publishes an average for the current calendar year for the implicit price deflator for the gross domestic product on their website. You can find the table on the FDA Qualified Facility website that I referenced here. For each year you're including, multiply the sum of annual sales plus market value in current US dollars by the 2017 implicit price deflator index number and divide it by the current year implicit price deflator index number. The mathematical answer is the annual sales plus market value in 2017 dollars, inflation-adjusted sales plus market value. To determine the 3-year average of the inflation-adjusted annual sales plus market value, add the annual inflation-adjusted sales for the previous 3 years and divide the sum by 3. If this number is less than $1 million, you are a qualified facility. Here are some examples of what you would include in this number. In this case, a jam producer sells to local restaurants and wholesale. To calculate the average annual sales and market value, you include the sales to qualified end users. Here, local restaurants, wholesale, and the value of inventory held. The total is $800,000, so below the $1 million threshold. In this example, the jam producer is also making juice and selling eggs. All sales of these foods are included in the calculation even though the juice and the eggs are exempt from the Preventive Controls rule.